How's it going, Jeremiahs? In today's video, I will be teaching you everything you need to know about reading notes. If you haven't watched my very first part 1 of this beginner keyboard and piano lessons, make sure you watch that first, as that will cover most of the grounds you will need to understand this tutorial over here. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Jeremy C, and on my channel I make reviews as well as tutorials on a range of keyboards and pianos. If you enjoy content like this, make sure you subscribe and smash that notification bell icon. Let's start with the basic. Music is written on what is called a staff, or plural is called a stave, and this is actually made up of 5 horizontal lines here as well as 4 different spaces. And we will write our notes, our rests, as well as to determine the pitch of the notes using this system. We usually refer these lines to as the bottom line and the top line, and we have the second line here and the middle line, and here is the fourth line. And for spaces, we usually refer to this as the bottom space, and on top here we call this the top space, and we have the second space and the third space. Notes can also appear beyond these 5 lines and 4 spaces, and we call this ledger lines. So you can actually draw additional lines above and beyond the staff to represent notes that you may want going beyond the system. Over here we have what is called a treble clef, and the treble clef is usually used for instruments that have a higher sound. For example, the right hand of a piano or a keyboard, as well as instruments like the flute, the violin. This treble clef is also commonly referred to as the G clef, and I will tell you why later on in this video. Over here we have what is called the bass clef. So the bass clef is usually used for instruments which has a lower sound, or the left hand part of a keyboard or a piano. So instruments that use a bass clef are, for example, your double bass and your cello. And this bass clef is also called the F clef, and I'll be explaining it to you why later on in this video. In the same manner, you can also draw additional ledger lines if necessary above or beyond the system. If you have very low notes, you can use this to represent notes beyond the system of 5 lines and 4 spaces. Before we move on to the next part, do take a minute to check out the links in my description where I have my recommended piano and keyboard learning app, and I'm giving you free time unlimited access to learn up to 8 songs on that app. You can also check out my recommended list of pianos as well as keyboards if you are thinking of getting an instrument for yourself to start off with. Music notes are represented on the page using little dots, circles, as well as lines. This dot here is called the note head, and these lines are called the stem. This is also the same thing for the bass clef. And music notes are represented by alphabets, and they start from this note here, which is middle C. And this note is exactly the same as this note here on the bass clef. They are actually the same note on the piano or the keyboard, and that is middle C. For a greater explanation of what middle C is, do refer to my previous video, part 1, which I explained the basics of playing the piano as well as the keyboard. I'll leave a link right up here. And it goes sequentially. After C, you get a D. After D, you get a E, F, G, A, B, and it goes back to a C again. C, D, E, F, G. So you can see that the alphabetical system is climbing, and it stops at G before going up to A again. One peculiarity you can see is that you have a line going across the note. Next one, it sits on a space. After that, you have a line going across the note, and next one you have a space. Following that, you have a line across the note, and then next one you have one that is at a space. So we usually refer to this as a line note. A line note has a line cutting across the note head, and we usually refer to this as a space note, a note that is sitting right in the middle of the space. This is the same regardless whether it is the treble clef or the bass clef. Now let's look at the bass clef, which is used on the left hand side of the piano or the keyboard, and is usually used to represent the lower notes. As you can see, it is moving downwards in this instance, which means that the notes will move from middle C and go further and further left. Let me illustrate this with a diagram of the keys on a piano. Let's assume that this is middle C. So therefore, this note here is over here, and on the bass clef, this note is the exact same note and the exact same key on the piano. The notes here on the treble clef is moving upwards, and therefore it will move towards the right of the keyboard. Whereas these notes here represented here on the bass clef is moving down, and your notes will be moving downwards. If you look at the notes here, C, D, E, F, G, they will be represented here on the keyboard. D, E, F, G, A, B, etc. Next, looking at the bass clef, since this is moving downwards, we have C, B, A, G, F, E, etc. And represented here on the keyboard, we have here middle C, which is this note here, and it is moving downwards. B, this is the note here. A, G, F, E, D, which is this note here, and we have a lower C, which is what we have here, etc., as it moves downwards. Earlier, I mentioned that the treble clef is also called the G clef because the G clef indicates where a G note is. If you look at how this is drawn, it will curl around this line here. It will start curling around this line here, and this is the G line, and it represents the G note. And as you draw this, you have a curl up and then down and a tail, and that is why this is called the G clef. And this is also called the F clef. The reason why this is called the F clef because these two dots, as well as this darker dot here, that this is an F line. So if you were to draw a line here and keep going on the same line, you will eventually meet this F note. Next, let's look at accidentals. Accidentals are sharps which raises the sound by one step, flat which lowers the sound by one step, as well as a natural which cancels any prior accidentals. Over here we have a note on a space. As you can recall earlier, the spaces spell F-A-C-E, and therefore this is an A note. If we were to draw a sharp symbol on the left hand side of the A note, this would be an A sharp. On the keyboard, this is A. An A sharp would be this black note here on the right. And on this new bar, we also have an A again. The sharp lasts until the end of the bar line, and after the bar line, this sharp is no longer valid. This is an A note, and if you were to apply a flat sign beside the A note, this sound of this note will move down one step to A flat, and this would be the black note A flat. Let's look at this other note here on the treble clef on the third space, F-A-C. This is a C note. Assuming that this C is over here and you have a sharp sign on this C note, therefore it would move up to this black note, and this C sharp is referring to this black note over here. However, you can cancel the sharp on the next C by drawing a natural sign. So if you were to draw a natural sign here, this C will revert to being just a regular C. If you didn't draw a natural sign, if you were to draw another C note here, this note would continue to be a C sharp and will continue to be a C sharp until cancelled by a natural sign. And the sharp or any accidental will only expire at the end of a bar. In this part of the video, we will be talking about the time value of every note. As you can see here, when you draw a single circle like this, an empty blank circle like this, this is a 4-beat note. This means that you have to hold this note for 4 beats. You are gonna press the note 1, 2, 3, 4 and release it only after 4 beats has passed. If you were to draw a stem, regardless if it's downwards or upwards like this would be a 2 counts beat. As you can tell, in a bar that is 4 counts in duration, you can put 2 notes of 2 counts each in that bar. In this case, you would play each note for 2 beats like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is in a common 4/4 timing, which means that there are 4 beats in a bar. Next, let's look at this time signature. This time signature is the same as a 4/4 time signature and it stands for common time. In the same way, one bar would have 4 counts. And whenever you have a dark note like this is filled up here with a stem, regardless if it's pointing up or down, each of this note will be 1 beat each. Therefore, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 count each. 1, 2, 3, 4. You would play a note on every beat. Finally, we get to this part here, which has a beam. In addition to the note head, which is dark, we have a stem as well as being connected by a beam. And these are half count notes. Therefore, in a bar of a 4 count duration, there will be 8 of this in an entire bar because each of this is half a beat. And you would count them and play them as such. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. By counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, you have essentially subdivided the entire bar into 8 events of half beat each. This is another common time signature, 3/4 time signature. This is to tell you that there are 3 beats in a bar. And if you take a 2 count note like this and put a dot beside it, this is a 3 count beat, and therefore in a bar which has 3 counts, this note will fill up the entire bar and you would play this and hold it for 3 counts. This time signature is very popular for music such as waltzes. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. In the same way here, you have a 2 count note because there's no dot here, and you have a dark note here, and this is a 1 count note. So you will hold this for 2 counts and play this on the 3rd beat. In the same way you play this, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. You play the note on the 1st beat, hold it for 2 counts and play the note on the 3rd beat. If you were to put a dot beside a 1 beat note, this will become a 1.5 beat. As you can see, 1.5 plus 1.5 equals to 3 beats. And in a 3 beats here, we have 6 half beats. And in the same way, you will count it 1 and 2 and 3 and. You will play every event on every half beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Thereby ending up by playing 6 notes in a bar. Here we have rest. That is to tell you not to play anything during the time where you need to rest, and for the duration of this time in these different symbols, you will have silent in that part accordingly. This is a 4 beat rest. So you will play nothing for 4 beats. This is a 2-beat rest. You can see that it is drawn on this line here, resting on this line, whereas this is hanging from this line up here. So you will rest for 2 beats. And down over here, you have what is called a 1-beat rest. You will be resting for 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of this rest takes up an entire bar. This cymbal is a half-beat rest, and you can put 8 of this in a bar of 4 beats. Half, 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 half. These are half-beat rests.